Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Fireside chat on building a trustworthy and successful business. We have with us Mr. Amrish Rao, Chief Executive Officer, Finance, and Mr. Kunal Shah, Founder and CEO of CRED. Amrish, sir, I would request you to kindly take the lead.
Hi, good. I'm happy to be here in this evening, and more importantly, fantastic to connect with my dear brother Kunal. So, Kunal, this is going to be fun. It's been a long day for everybody. I'm sure uh, you and I have been here to give the entertainment. So, I would suggest that let's keep our conversation looking into the future. Does that work for you, Kunal?
That works perfectly fine.
Wonderful. So, you know what, Kunal, before we get on with our few things that we discuss about what we should go through, let me ask you a thing about the future. So, Son San, a few years back, said of SoftBank, Son San said that you'd like to build a business for 300 years. And, you exited Free Charge in 5 years' time. I exited Citrus in 5 years' time. Now we are on another journey. How should we think about the future, man?
I think the question is, should we be around to run it? And sometimes we are probably not the best people to be taking it 2 to 300 years mark. And sometimes we have to let evolution and Darwin behavior kick in and accept that something is not going to work out. Uh, let's take an example of wallets versus UPI, right? If a superior product shows up, just like Darwin's theory, a better species shows up, uh, the older species will have to figure out a way to either survive or disappear. And I think what I think will continue for not 300 but 5,000 years and thousands of years after that, and even beyond humanity, is the ability to become more and more efficient at doing something. And I think we often love to hold on to our old facts, but sometimes things just change overnight. Look at us, all of us. We always wish that conferences should be digital, and we don't need to travel all the way for one flight to do 1 30-minute session. Now you're sitting at home, I'm sitting at home, and maybe thousands of people are attending it. So the question is, should we be building for 300 years? I think we should contribute for evolution. We should not try to have a territorial mindset that we will be around for 300 years, because I believe that that mindset keeps us getting irrelevant. Sometimes we will be part of the game to make that happen, sometimes we will not. And if everybody is building for 300 years, imagine how boring will it be.
True, true. I think the very interesting one is that today we have somebody like Narayan Murthy. He built his business, handed it over to another leadership. The another leadership is taking. I don't know if you saw this, but the Infosys results were like fantastic this time around. The stock price is at its near to all-time high. So no, I agree with you that there is a evolution change. You talked about wallets. Um, let me just put you on the spot on a few things, right? Look, why don't we do this, Kunal? Let's look at what the future holds. Okay, so what are the few things that we are long on, and what are the few things that we are short on? So let me sort of play this out with you. So when you look at Reliance GeoMart and the way GeoMart has come up, I honestly think that Facebook and Google have had a bit of a cop out moment, right? Go back Reliance Geo, invest into Reliance Geo, and all of that. What do you think about that? Are you long on Reliance Geo story, or are you short on the Reliance Geo story? You can do it on the stock exchange. By the way, you did touch the collar. I promised you, you will touch the collar.
Uh, so I would say I'm long on Geo, and not because of what we see today, but the way the country's consumer behavior works. I have noticed that every country that is always low on trust naturally also has concentration of trust. So you will see three things emerge in low trust nations. One is super apps, second is superstars, and third is super companies, right? And if you look at the history of India, where you see a Tata group made from furniture to salt to jewelry to everything, you will see concentration happen. And you will see a Shah Rukh Khan being a cricket guy and a star and also being a villain and everything. And same way, super apps where a Paytm is also doing movies and wallets and payments and probably stockbroking and maybe 500 more things. And this is a very unique phenomenon you see in low trust nations. So I believe that any company that manages to get trust of masses will continue to do well because it's natural tailwinds for them. For a lot of young startups, it's going to be headwinds because just like a newbie from no industry background shows up in movies and suddenly tries to hope that he will become a superstar, the chances of that are minuscule. And same way, India is going to keep playing out this scenario. And this is nothing to do with these companies. It's just the way how low trust nations behave world over.
Interesting. So are you long or you're short? So you're saying you're long.
I'm absolutely long. And I think it doesn't matter what the form factor is. Actually, let me ask you a question on that note. Are you long or short on these EDC terminals that we've had forever, where you swipe a card and do all sorts of things? Are you short or long on it?
That's an interesting one, right? So, look, I have to tell you this that I think the world is going to change. So, in the next few years' time, what's going to happen is the consumer is not going to know what is a offline transaction and what is an online transaction. So, if you use your app to do a QR payment transaction, is it an offline transaction? Is it an online transaction? So I think the EDC and the device for payments, I'm actually short. However, at the same time, there is a very interesting trend which is going on, which is that merchants are asking for more to be delivered through a device. So I do think the device will morph into something else, and hence I am long on the device strategy. I actually have two very interesting analogies on that one. So when Stripe says that we have a one API which does a lot more than payments, I think similarly what's going to happen is there's going to be one device which is going to be doing much more than payments. So hence device is going to be long. The other story, and you'll be shocked with this other story, right? So what we did was we did a research with our merchants and said, we now come out with an Android device. What would you want to have on the Android device? And we asked them to prioritize them. Can you believe what came out as number 3 was Bhajan? And I'm like, how does Bhajan come up as number 3? The point is, the guy says that I come into my shop in the morning and I keep my phone because I want to play a bhajan in the morning, just for the, good energies to come in. He said, my phone gets wasted for running the bhajan. Your point of sale is not working in the mornings at the start of the day. I wish it can play some bhajans for me. So the merchant community actually came back and said, we would love to have bhajans on that device. So I think on devices, I'm long. On POS and EDCs, I would say I'm short.
It's amazing. I would have never predicted bhajan is a feature.
I agree. I know what you mean. I actually thought that Crick Info or Crick Buzz might be higher, but that actually came out 8 or 9 on that list. You'd be surprised.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. So my turn here. So why don't I ask you the easy ball? Now that I gave you the tough one, let me give you the easy ball one, right? So as Kunal, you yourself have taught me over the years that lending has been around for thousands of years, right? And Sapiens has told us how lending has evolved over the thousands of years. How do you see lending in the next 20 years in India? Are you generally long on it? Look, I have to tell you this, right? Every time I decide to get into lending and I don't get into lending, in 2 years' time, I feel really happy that I didn't do lending. I have to tell you that lending is a tough business. How do you see the next 20 years for lending in India?
I think lending is opposite of a business. And therefore, anybody who's a good sales guy should ideally not do lending business because they will naturally get into the trap of growth. But I think it's a business where, in a normal business, I am selling to a consumer. In lending, a consumer is selling to me that I should give him money or her money. Right? And therefore, fundamentally, every rule of these two businesses are fundamentally different. I would say that these organizations should not even sit in the same building because they will start becoming and infecting each other with risk mindset going too much into sales people and sales mindset going too much into risk people. So fundamentally, I think they are opposite businesses and they should not be together. However, saying that, I believe that with the evolution of all the APIs that we are seeing around us, today we saw a new announcement on how lending is going to be available on Rails. Uh, it is only a matter of time where the destination of desires will be the place where lending will exist to fulfill that desire. It is not going to be at a place where you go somewhere else to take some money and then use that, put it in a bank account and go and deposit in a desire. So I believe same is going to happen for, let's say, Instagram will kind of do shopping over there itself because it's the place that creates a desire. Like I want to buy this cool black t-shirt that Amrish is wearing. I saw that on Instagram and I think that is the place I will want to order. Just going and searching that on Google and finding it on Amazon and ordering, there's too many friction steps. So I believe all places where destination means all places where desires are built are also going to be the place where they will be fulfilled. And same, like for example, what Pine's success in EMI comes from that, right? You are at the destination of desire. Nobody's going and taking a personal loan to buy that smartphone.
Correct.
They're automatically using that terminal to just kind of fulfill that. So I believe every place that is a destination of desire will become the largest lending platform for considering everything is going to be coming on Rails.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I do believe that that's the place to go. Kunal, the way I see this is that the closer you are to the transaction, the more likely that for you to keep the economic value which is associated with it. So you're right. As where the transaction happen, even lending takes off there in a big way. No, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, and I think India has one fundamental mistake that people assume to be true. India fundamentally does not value time yet. The concept of valuing time does not exist. So making money on convenience is never going to be a big business, or SaaS would have been a very big business in India by now. Right?
Yeah.
Fundamentally, merchants don't believe or consumers don't believe in valuing time. And therefore, you see, India is not a very big M&A market as well, because first time you meet a company, every founder thinks, "Arey, isme kya hai? Main khud bana lega ye." Right? And not value the time that they will shrink by acquiring that company and moving faster into that product market fit. Right? But the thing is, a lot of times this concept creates very interesting business model twists. For example, uh, uh, in lending, you're likely to kind of create more margins if you remove more friction, because people will say, "Acha, theek hai yaar, 1% extra." But 1% extra on other businesses, if you have to take, you will almost die trying to get that 1% extra.
Correct.
But creating that 1% extra in lending might be easy if you make it a truly powerful experience. And I have one simple view on unsecured lending clearly, is that unsecured lending in India is largely taken by men. And I believe that they fundamentally have a little bit of shame associated to taking personal loans or anything to do with which makes them look like they were weak on finances. And I think any platform that makes it extremely dehumanized, there is no human you deal with for getting that loan or repaying that loan or collecting that thing, will actually do well as long as there is no human involved, because there's a lot of shame associated to actually, one interesting example, one very senior banker told me is that, Kunal, personal loans is like buying condoms for Indians. There is so much shame that you should assume that it's ideal if it happens without a human connection. They will keep taking it, just don't disturb them, which is quite an interesting insight to think about.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I keep saying this a lot of time. If you actually try and take a personal loan in India, the guy will turn up at your home. He will talk to your dad. He will talk to the community. You're like, dude, I don't need it. Stop. So I agree with you that personal loan is one of the most toughest experiences that one goes through. No doubt in
Please,
that.
let me ask you a question on that note. if you have to kind of think about like long and short on payment options, right? Unfortunately, we have developed more payment options and more payment rails, but the per capita income is nowhere to be seen growing, and especially one gen is just not working, which is a big problem for India. How do you see all of this kind of converging? Because in many markets, multiple payment ecosystems exist because there is a lot of per capita spends and a huge amount of consumption economy. How do you see all of this converging? Do you see all of them continuing? Like, do you see one cannibalizing the other? How do you see it play?
So, Kunal, I've been saying this for a few years, right? That I think the government of India in the last 5-6 years has done more for digital payments than anything else before this, right? So, a big kudos to the government for what they have done. I think a second part, which I feel that the government has, or the regulator has, or the ecosystem has overtried, is try and change consumer behavior when it comes to digital payments. I think what the consumer is asking for is something very simple by which the transaction gets completed. Consumer has no care which says that do I use a credit card or do I use a QR or Aadhaar or UPI or whatever it is. In fact, the simplest payment product is what the consumer wants. And as soon as the consumer understands what the simplest payment product, she or he is never going to go away from that simplest payment product, right? So our responsibility is to find out the simplest payment product and deliver it. Look, I know this is a flavor of the day, and it is very cliche to say this, but the recurring payment story, I think, in India was one of the most important things, because what is going to happen is as we move to the whole subscription economy, and then we move to the need of one recurring payment model, and we really didn't have it for so many years, especially on debit cards or debiting your directly your bank account. What you will find is there will be significant growth of recurring payment transactions on UPI in India over the next 3 to 5 years time than any other platforms existing out there. So I'm a big believer that you give the consumer the simplest way to pay, and the consumer will pay. Like QR, before QR got associated with payments in India, everybody felt that QR is not such a big idea. But as soon as QR got associated with payments, even QR got a fillip out of it. So I think
Correct.
consumers are looking for the simplest way to pay, and I think this whole recurring payment thing is a really good initiative in that direction.
Should we take some of the questions in the chat? There are quite a few questions that have come in the chat. Should we take some of that? You want to pick?
I haven't read as yet. Yeah. I don't know if the host has read any, but
I think there are interesting one. Being two seasoned entrepreneurs, what advice do you have for founders and startups during these COVID times? Amrish, you want to go first?
no, why don't you go first? Yeah.
Uh, I have a simple view that uh, COVID is forcing the world to be insanely more efficient. And historically, inefficiency has been the largest employer of the world. And if you combine these two insights, you will realize that the adoption of technology in all dimensions of life is going to be all-time high. I'll give you a small way to think about this. We all have, let's say, families who have children learning online on the platforms right now through various teachers. But if they can learn online, why would anybody want their kid to learn from not the best teacher? What if the best physics teacher of India taught every single child online? Wouldn't that change everything, right? So I think, according to me, in struggling COVID times, you have to find opportunities. Every crisis brings unusual opportunities, and a lot of people are going to benefit from that. So you need to ask yourself that you want to think that if you start thinking. Somebody asked me recently that how are you coping with COVID? If you start having this victim mindset, saying that what am I coping with, how am I dealing with it, struggling, if you use these words, you will miss the opportunities. And I would say that the reason some of us have survived, because we have gone through probably hundreds of crises in our life, right? Like Amrish and I have combined maybe 500 scars, considering both of us started our careers as salespeople. We've kind of been through so many of them that we think of the next stage. Like assume that this COVID festival is going to last for the whole 2020. What is your next step? Assume
Did you just say COVID festival? Did you just say COVID festival?
well, that's a nice way of kind of reframing your brain, saying
Yeah,
that this
sure.
is an opportunity time.
Yeah, sure. Look, what the stock markets, they say what goes up buy, what goes down short. I have to tell you that I feel exactly the same in the COVID days, right? So I think coming out of the COVID days, the world is going to be completely different. So what is obvious to us, which is online payments, digital payments, edtech, all of that is going to get accelerated. I always believe that what does funding do, right? What funding does is it allows you to bring the future earlier, nothing more than that, right? Now, similarly, COVID has brought the future earlier for you. So embrace it and then accelerate in those areas which is obvious to you. At the same time, there are areas which are obvious. Like, for example, am I going to go and buy a PVR stock or an INOX stock? I'm not going to buy a PVR and an INOX stock for the next 2 to 3 years' time. So those businesses which are obvious is going to get impacted, I think you should stay away from it. So as an entrepreneur, I would say just go jump into it, accelerate into those obvious areas. Don't get too worried about the fact that somebody has launched a TikTok competitor or somebody has launched a EdTech competitor. The market is so huge and it's not even day zero in those areas. I think today is the best day to actually go and start a business in that space, especially in those areas where you think business is going to get accelerated. Don't start a movie theater chain. I promise you that.
But I think, Amrish, the thing that the point about flashing future, the thing is, you need to be in love of being successful to see the future, not love with your original idea. A lot of founders make a mistake to be so much love of their original idea that you can't see the flaws in it, and they definitely cannot see the future because of that. And I think the only recommendation I would say that you should be in love of being successful, not in love with your idea. Because if you fall in love with your idea, it will become irrelevant very quickly.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, Kunal, going back to the long shot piece, I have to ask you this because, like you, like me, you are also fairly invested in that space. What do you think of this whole neo-banking world, and do you think the neo-banking time has arrived, or अभी थोड़ा time बाकी है?
Amrish, we were both extremely biased people because we've invested in almost every neobank that exists in the country. But I have to be honest to admit that I feel the neobanking moment happened when we got our private banks like HDFC Access in this country, because that was our neobanking moment in many ways. The true thing that will have to be done on innovation has to be path breaking. I do not see consumers shifting the deposits behavior. And I have a very simple view. People will take any lending instrument, right? You might take credit card of 500 banks, but where will you keep your deposit is not going to be same thing. And I think there is a concentration of trust argument that I made earlier that will continue to be there. And to break that, you have to do innovation at a very different level. Uh, as of now, I am long on the possibility of neobanks. I've not seen something, and some of our friends are working on this, and I'm sure they'll really make that happen. But uh, let me put it this way: the need for customers on banking and the innovation. I think sometimes we are building solutions looking for a problem. And I think that's a fundamental issue, right? If we keep building solutions looking for a problem, then it will feel like we built this knife that nobody uses.
So basically, what you're saying, your money is long on neobanking, you are short on neobanking.
As of now, I am indifferent. I am long on some of these banks that have established their brand. I don't think deposit behavior shift as quickly, but we'll be all surprised, and that's why you and I have personally invested in a lot of these initiatives, and we will be surprised very, very soon.
Sure, I agree. I agree. You want to just take up another question at this time?
Let me ask you a long and short first before we jump on that. Uh, foreign, uh, uh, okay, B2C companies, foreign companies or Indian companies? What are you long on? What are you short on?
B2C? I'm clearly long on foreign companies, and I'm extremely short on Indian companies. And look, I have to be very honest with this one, right? I think, and you said this before, but I've obviously been thinking a lot about it. I think understanding consumer and consumer behavior is not something that we were taught in school. It's not something that we were taught during college days. Understanding consumer and consumer behavior is all that we learned out of understanding business, selling, understanding the wife. That's how we get to all of that, right? But in international markets, you've been taught consumer behavior from a very young age. And as you would see, there's been a wave around liberal arts for some time. I know it's changing. On the other hand, we've been taught zeros and ones when it comes to the whole engineering world. But when you look at, and people don't realize, right, the beauty about Robinhood is not the fact that Robinhood actually does zero charge on transaction. Robinhood has gamified stock trading and has understood consumer behavior and why consumers need to trade. Until and unless we don't have a set of founders and set of business people and entrepreneurs who come in, who say that my greatest strength is consumer behavior and consumer behavior in the online world, I think Indian businesses will find it very difficult even to come up with products which are very India centric, let alone take Indian businesses global. uh, and hence I have to say I'm long on those areas. Today I had this very interesting conversation with a squash coach friend of mine, and he was saying I found a great app, and he says, this is what a coach needs to tell his student. And I said, guys, if TikTok starts tomorrow, are you going to use TikTok or you're going to use some of these Indian apps? And he's saying, oh, I'll use TikTok. So I explained to him, I said, you're going to use TikTok because of consumer behavior and the whole consumer interface. Similarly, what are you doing to change all of that? And it was a the moment for him. He said, oh, okay. You mean to say I need to focus on that also? So, yeah, sorry. The short answer is I'm long
No, but
on international
you're
products.
right. You're absolutely right. I think the whole dimension of thinking from users first and consumers first, and uh, everybody uses the word gamification. Nobody has read a single book about that. Nobody's read a single done a single course about that. And I think it is hurting us. The whole not understanding consumer behavior is hurting us. It's so hard to hire talent that understands consumer behavior. I spend at least 10, 12 hours every week to learn some dimension of human behavior. And every week I feel I'm more dumb because I just don't know so many things. And you are right. We did one interesting thing at CRED. Every week, we bring now, because of the world is on now Zoom and Google Meets and WebEx. We bring two extraordinary consumer brains from US or China to come speak to the team every week, and we are realizing how much we have no clue about. So I think this COVID has been an extraordinary time to realize that we used to calibrate based on people based on around us. But
Yeah.
to really win any game, you have to be world class. The world is hyper connected. Every game requires you to be a world class player. Otherwise, you are dead.
Yeah, and Kunal, this is my plug-in into this conversation, right? Just today, we actually announced a investment into a company called Fave in Southeast Asia. Exactly the same point, right? Exactly similar to what you're doing. To understand that space and what that team has done, I think we are going to really enjoy that. We're going to learn something completely new, and we've got to embrace this new world, right? So very similar. I think Indian businesses also need to embrace this whole world around consumer behavior and gamification, and that's exactly what we did today in terms of our investment with Fave.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know on role of a regulator, according to you, to protect some of these companies in India from, let's say, foreign companies in many ways. Do you feel that it is good to regulate to a point where we can thrive with local ecosystems, or the country should be open to let the global innovation kick in and work over here? What's your view on this?
Well, I'm going to be very honest and tell you this, that I haven't walked into Reserve Bank of India after 2009. 2009 was the last time I walked into the Reserve Bank of India building. And my take on it is, if the regulator is not interested in your business, you need to be worried. But if the regulator is interested in your business, you should be alarmed. So, the farther you keep you keep the regulator or the government away from the business you're building, I think you're in a sweet spot. So invariably, at least as an entrepreneur, I have tried to be in businesses which is always 1 degree separated than what the regulator loves. Because as soon as the regulator gets into those businesses, I tell you, life is going to be very, very difficult. I have to say that some things have helped us, right? So, I'm going to be the first one to say that coming in with 3D Secure on online payments, I firmly sit in the camp that has benefited India in a big way.
Yes.
And that has made a very big difference. Just back to that earlier point, I do think that in the next 3 years, Indian regulator will give out a virtual banking license. Will happen in the next 3 years' time. I think the regulator in India will experiment and will try different areas. But just being who I am, I just want to remain in the world which is 1 degree separated than what the regulator loves.
That's pretty cool. I just think that I have fundamentally believed that financial services and fintech businesses, there is going to be so much opportunity, and I don't think it's going to be one through just kind of broad stroke things. There are going to be so many new innovations that will keep coming in, and everybody will find that one corner to make something big. I mean, look at the last 10 years, the amount of interesting business models that have emerged. And you would not imagine that this could be a large enough business to start with. And even banks have done so much innovation on trying to come up with new form factors. Now, being the large entities and not being tech first companies, the amount of stuff that they have shipped, like there was a time where earlier the bank apps would be like, you'd be like, wow, I can't believe this is the app. And now you see that transformation happening, right? You see them building good products and competing with some of the younger companies. So I have a view that uh, understanding micro segments is going to be supremely unique, right? Can you understand SMEs well? Can you understand salaried segment in a certain age group well? Do you understand the teenage consumer cohort well? And I think the broad stroke solution is not going to work because consumers are trying to be different, right? And I think the moment they're trying to be different, they're going to find unique ways to kind of express themselves or use products and brag about it. And I think any brand that is trustworthy will do well, but trustworthy plus cool is going to do better because people like to say things in open. Like, for example, it is cool to say, hey, check Spotify, right? Now, the thing is that word, if that has any status associated to it, it will automatically kind of feel that you are feeling elevated because of that. So I believe that in future, earlier, like branding was only about trust in fintech, but very soon it is going to be about great design. It is going to be about great narrative, great storytelling, great ads. And one cannot just sit on the merit of just building a great tool. I don't think tools are going to make it to the future.
Right. So, on that, and we've got about 5 minutes left, Kunal. So, on that, I've always wanted to ask you this question. Maybe I'll ask this on an open forum. I downloaded CRED, and as you know, I love the product, right? But in the world around trust and trust building, you've actually gone with the dark mode or the dark look to it. You've not gone with the white look. I've been noticing this that Kunal, you've also been wearing dark t-shirts quite a bit. I think there is a theory out there. Has to be a theory. Would love to hear your theory about why you think the dark mode actually creates trust with the consumers.
I think one has to think of these things in more nuance than just painting broad strokes. The way to think about it is that black is associated with premium, right? And when you start thinking premium, you don't worry about trust because you look up to it in many ways, right? So you are not going to let's say walk up to, let's say, a fancy car which is now it's black. You're not going to say, "Acha, isme, like, how does this work?" You are most likely going to learn yourself how does it work, right? And I think what I have seen is that Amex has done a great job of this, that creating this superior brand where you have to take some bold steps. So we actually went dark mode before WhatsApp and Instagram and everybody else went dark mode. And being a bold company creates a polarizing behavior. You will have people who love the product, and you'll have people who will want to constantly hate the product. But according to me, they are the exact same people. Imagine if nobody talks about CRED. I mean, that's the day I'll be the most upset person, because the opposite of love is not hate; it's indifference, right? So I'm actually happy that we are able to create some polarizing behavior and create that. Now, in coming to trust is very interesting. We look at other people doing it now. Amrish is on CRED, Kunal is on CRED. Let's say many founders are on CRED. That creates more trust, that they trust the product versus the color of the product. So I think marketing, people confuse that, oh, if I do one ad and one blue color and suddenly every payment app is blue color, right? Then how do you differentiate? How will people know that this is not for me, I'm different, and this is for me? So that's the way we think about it. I don't know if it has a negative impact, but it definitely makes you different. And I think I bet I'm long on being different than being same.
Well done. Well done. Good one. Take care. Is there any new question out there? Nothing interesting, isn't it?
Let me ask you a question, Amrish. If you have to kind of pick one big theme that nobody's seeing for future in fintech, what is that theme?
That's a very interesting one. Like, look, I think you've got to break it down into a global problem, and there's a India problem, right? And I know that it's a very cliche answer, but I'm so big on the whole credit story that I have to tell you that credit and lending is the one which India has to solve, and the outcome associated with is so huge. Just think about it. HDFC Bank, it's taken them 25 years to build the organization of this size and scale. Bajaj Finance has built a fantastic business in the last 12 years' time. I think there is a company out there which is going to come up with a comparable position in just 6 years' time, because as we go into the digital world, and then that business can rule the market for almost the next 50 years, because India is so underpenetrated when it comes to access to credit. It is not funny. So if there's one massive problem to solve, I have to say it is lending. Now, of course, everything has to come into play, right? And funnily, I actually don't believe that this is a fintech problem. I believe that this is a legal problem. If our legal systems are good and strong, and there is enough deterrent for somebody to give up on their loans, I think lending in India will explode, economy will explode. So I think if there's one big bet, it has to be lending. On the global side, I think and I don't want to talk about crypto and blockchain and areas which I'm not an expert at. I do believe that moving money is still a massive problem, right? Look, people talk about Wirecard and what happened with Wirecard and all of that, and then people say, why didn't the auditors find that out? Moving money across markets, across jurisdiction, regulations, currencies is so very complex thing to do that I actually think that that is one area which is going to create a very, very big fintech. And, I don't think so a TransferWise or a Adyen has even started in that segment. I think moving money is and it's, by the way, it's not that you're solving for rocket science. You know what the problem statement is. You just need to put the pipes together to solve for it. So I think moving money is going to become a very big opportunity area over the next few years. And I'm saying that globally. I'm saying that globally.
Cool. Perfect. I think it's time. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope this was fun. It's evening time, and hopefully you will be more optimistic about fintech after this discussion.
Kunal, it's great to have a chat with you. And look, I have to congratulate the GFF team out here. This is a fantastic event out there. To pull 10,000 people on one day is mind-boggling. So proud to be part of this fintech industry.
Thank you so much to both of you guys. It was such an amazing session. Thank you so much for being here. Special thanks to our sponsors, AWS, IDFC First Bank, PhonePe, Fintech, and PayPoint. Also, I would like to remind our delegates, don't forget to visit our 70+ exhibitor booths to check out their offerings and to pick up your points, which can help you win some exciting prizes. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks, Kunal. Bye.